Hey guys, it's me, Jody Ann, and this is your companion to the Witching Half Hour, episode 27, where we talk about the Hermit card. Now, one of the things about the Hermit card is it's pretty steady in its symbology. What I wanted to find in my collection of decks for you, some examples of like regular symbology and what it typically looks like, and then some of my collector decks that have gone a little bit outside of the norm and have brought us some different ideas. So first off, let's look at traditional hermit cards. So I pulled the Tarot of the Golden Dawn, and you can see in this card that it's just a dude, right? It's just our hermit guy. But again, like I said, he's usually in a barren landscape. He is in a barren landscape here. We have the lantern, we have the stick. He's not in his traditional pose. Like usually he's holding up the lantern, like I said, like he holds it up and then you can see the inside of his lining of his cloak. So I will pull one of those. I just wanted to show you another example because remember I talked about how he sometimes has a scythe. So in this deck, this next card is from the Mythic Tarot, and it's all based on Greek mythology. In this one, he has a scythe. Still has a lantern. I think it's cool that it's like a flaming, like oil lantern. He has this raven, which is interesting, right? And he has a scythe. Still cloaked, still a barren landscape, right? He's alone out in the wilderness. He's typically alone. So now let's pull one where you can see that cloak and how it gets illuminated. Now here I've pulled this one off the internet. And you can see in this one, it's that really traditional holding up the lantern. And you can see that that cloak is being illuminated. So this is that symbology that we talked about in the podcast, where the light is shining on the inside of the cloak. And you can see that going into this hermit phase, going deep into the shadows and isolation and being with yourself illuminates the inside of things. This is about it being an inside job, right? And that is the symbology of this card. It's about getting quiet. It's about going deep into things. It's about learning how to find your inner truth and your inner chord. And there's a lot of stuff in our collective conscience about how isolation and a spiritual path and just being with yourself leads to enlightenment. You need to take that lantern with you, though. You need to shine a light into your dark places. Let's have a look at some of my more artsy decks, some of my collector decks, and see how the artists have shared this idea. The card I have here is from the Book of Shadows Tarot. This is from the As Above side of the deck. Remember, that's a dual deck that I have. What I like about this one that they're calling the path is it really, you can see that they're highlighting the idea of going out and seeking and finding what is true and right for you. They're not showing so much the traditional, but you get the symbology and the way that this character is going deep into the tunnel. I like how it shows the light in the darkness. I like how the light is still represented by that light shining through and illuminating the path, and how our path to our internal truth is lit for us. Now, this one's really cool because I find that the Hermit card is really airy. In the podcast, I talk about how the hermit is often in like a barren landscape or a wintry landscape, and the color scheme is often very airy or foggy and kind of blues and grays. I love this next card. So it brings in the water element instead of just the air element. You can see here, this is the Mary L. Tarot. This is their hermit card. And look at the water in it. And I love this aspect of it because when we look at the symbology of water, water's about our emotion. But if you see this hermit, he's not being overwhelmed by the emotion. He's like almost controlling it. He's almost the master of his emotion, maybe. without suppressing it. Like the water's clearly there. It's all foamy. It's all beautiful. And then you can see, I'm not sure if that's wind coming out of his face, like out of his mind, or if it's supposed to be more water. I just like this one. I like how we have the water element represented and the vibrance of this card, how the artist, this whole deck is super arty and vibrant, but I really love the color choice in this one. So we can still see the symbology there. He still has the lantern, right? He's still alone in his landscape. He's still doing the deep internal work. That's what the water's representing. Now, for the Deviant Moon Tarot, now I find this whole deck is very kind of shadow work focused. And as you can see with their Hermit card, it looks more like the shadow you find as you do the deep work of the Hermit card. So you have this very, really sad kind of like almost lost inner child looking little person there, quite overwhelmed with emotion. But when I see this card and I'm doing a reading, it feels more like the work of the person you're being asked to comfort and rescue this aspect of your shadow self, to go in lovingly, comfortingly, and look and bring truth to this. Bring knowing, bring knowledge, bring your inner work to this little person who's clearly having a very, very bad time. The work we do when we are confronted with the Hermit card is that inner work. It is that shadow work. It is looking at our shadow aspects. It is going internal and really examining what is feeding our ego. What are we really attached to? When we spend time alone in isolation, we learn what we're attached to and what is necessary and what isn't necessary on multiple layers, right? Like on our material layers, on our emotional layers, on our spiritual layers. So that's kind of the divination meaning, the divination meaning. So that's the real meaning behind the card. And remember, with all of these characters in the tarot, they can either be you being asked to embody the archetype and do the work of the archetype, or it can be that archetype coming into your life to lead and guide you. And you want to look to the outside cards, the cards surrounding it, who's going to tell you in your reading what this card is going to represent. So in the Wild Unknown Tarot, most of the deck is actually animals. So for their Hermit card, they've used a turtle, which is a perfect representation. They are often isolated inside their little house. But again, note that the lantern's there on top of the turtle's back. I really like the way she did that, how she represented bringing the light to your problem and bringing the light to the darkness and enlightenment and the spirituality aspect of the card there. So we want to look at, when we're reading this card, the symbolism around light and enlightenment, as well as that divination meaning of the card. So the last card I want to leave you with is this one from the Wildwood Tarot. I think it's probably just art-wise my favorite. It's just beautiful. I love the winter scene. I love the little bird there. It really kind of talks about hope, and it makes me think of messages from spirit and how in our dark times we always receive messages. He has a light with him. He's got his lantern. I like the Christmassy feel, like it really is that time of winter and death and reflection. And I like that it's a hooded hermit and that you don't see their face. I don't know why, I just like that. And just that little bit of bright pink light in the distance there. I like that. Just talks about hope to me. This is just, I just think it's beautiful. So this one and the Marielle Tarot, I think, would be my favorite hermit cards in my collection. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed looking at these cards with me. Please remember, I do have a podcast, The Witching Half Hour. So I'm making my way through the higher arcana there. And I do talk more about the cards there than I do here. This is just kind of a little visual because it's hard to talk about art when you can't see it. Okay, thanks.